And we're live.
Can I get a referee somewhere to like kick some of the internet trolls out? Can I do that?
Can
I do that? Can I do that? Please come here. Please come here. Anyway, welcome to the Raptors Rewind. Wait.
Shout out my old show with Tyler.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now. Just know that you are locked in onto the point with
Skip
and the King. You guys go down there, click subscribe, click like, leave a comment, let us know what you think, and it helps our algorithm, whatever those things are. But today we have the one and only Tyler Partridge, one. That's where you can find him because he's number one to me. We have Jazz Grewal right over there. Anytime you guys go pick up a Toronto Star, you know that he's got something to do with it. Thank you guys for coming back. It's been a while. We appreciate you guys coming on, and welcome to the point.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks as always.
Yep. So let's get right into this. Guys, this is something people don't really talk about. Like, I see a lot of you fair weather Raptors fans talking about trade this, cancel that, the whole cancel culture, whatever. Okay, but let's talk about where these Raptors come from. They come from the 905, the Raptors 905, the G League team. And over the last couple of years, they've been doing very well, keeping things in the pipeline and pushing things out of the pipeline. So, Jazz, I want to ask you first, what did you see over the last few years coming out of the Raptors 905, maybe even currently? But what have you seen? And could you explain this to us? Because the two of you guys are here because you guys are two of the greatest basketball Canadian minds that I've ever encountered. So please answer me.
First of all, thank you for the praise. I'm sure there's a lot of Canadian basketball aficionados who would disagree, but I appreciate it, right? I told you guys from the start of the show before the show that I covered the 905 for the first 3 years, so I was able to sort of see the evolution of the program, the organization, the shuffling of rosters, the shuffling of coaches. One sort of prevalent theme that I took notice of was just that culture that Masai sort of employs with the Raptors. It sort of spreads to the 905 as well. There would be games where Masai would be at the game, fist bumping media members and just sort of being a part of that culture. And again, if you're at 905 games, you'll notice a lot of the NBA guys will come down and support the young guys as well.
Yeah.
Since the DeMar
eating the popcorn.
Yeah. Well, even before then, when DeMar used to come down and those guys, James Johnson, they used to always show DeLon Love and Fred and Pascal when he was there. I think right away, one of the important things that you got to mention is just the players and what they were able to accomplish in the 905. I mean, you go from Pascal Siakam, who wins Finals MVP. You get Chris Boucher, wins MVP of the year and Defensive Player of the Year. You got Lorenzo Brown, who he didn't pan out in the NBA, sort of had those inconsistent games, but he was a stud in the G League, and it just sort of it's sort of that proof, for incoming players that, because obviously there was a bit of a stigma for guys getting sent down. Like when I first saw Pascal in the G League, he was not happy to be there. He got sent down from the parent club in Toronto, and anytime you get sent down, it's with any league, right? You feel like you're getting relegated because you're not playing well. But that's not the case with the 905. I'm sure Tyler will touch on Delano Benton in a little bit, but when you have those in-between games between like a little lull in the schedule of the Raptors schedule, you can throw guys down there, get some reps in, keep their legs active. It's obviously great for development, and just growing people's games. They're able to sort of try things out that they wouldn't be able to do in the NBA. But it's also a confidence booster. I mean, you saw it with Fred, Pascal, Chris, as I mentioned, but you also saw it with, you saw it with other guys as well, like O'Shea Brissett, after his 905 stint, he grew as a player from his days at Syracuse. DeLon was another guy who, was part of that sort of four-pronged point guard lineup. He and Fred were sort of shuffling in between the rotation until Fred eventually took over. And then Bebe and Bruno Caboclo. Obviously, Bruno's not in the NBA anymore, but, I saw firsthand his development over, the 2-3 years that he was there. And he grew just confidence-wise. He was willing to take shots that he wasn't able to take in his first or second year. And, I think that's one of the main things. Obviously, you're going to develop, but it's the confidence aspect as well. Norman Powell went from, Casey's doghouse to an active starting rotation player. And,
and a champion.
And a champion. And you see the contract that he was able to pull with the Portland Trail Blazers. So it's sort of like a springboard for these guys, especially guys who are not heralded. They sort of use it as, guys like Fred, who went undrafted, Norm, who was second round, Pascal, he started playing basketball so late in his career, right? And honestly, like, I can't think of one situation where someone's been sent down and they've been sort of, they've gotten worse in that sense. Either they got a two-way contract or got it into a rotation with another NBA team or, gained a lucrative contract overseas. So, yeah, it's nothing but positivity. And obviously, it's a cheaper alternative for fans, going to a 905 game. You still sort of get NBA level talent, like fringe talent. But closer seats, closer to the action. So there's nothing bad about the 905, and they've been, very, inspirational for a lot of these guys, I think.
Now, Tyler, I got to ask you, my man. I know you're going to like this question, but based on the positivity of the Raptors and what Jazz just said about some of them leaving 905, going overseas, what about overseas coming here?
Mm-hmm.
Especially Alex Antetokounmpo, the fourth brother. The only one that doesn't have a ring yet. Now, how do you feel about him in the G League? The mini freak?
The mini Greek freak, right? The only time you can call someone who's 6'8" mini, I think, would be Alex Antetokounmpo. Let me put my hyperbole hat on here because I think his name has probably got he has bigger shoes to fill just because of his last name. That being said, Giannis Antetokounmpo has said he believes that Alex can be better than him. Whether he's just a really supportive brother or not, I don't know. You know what? I'm going to take that shot. So
I wish I had one.
So the dream for all Raptors fans last season was Masai was going to go and get us an Antetokounmpo, and he was going to bring us to the promised land. So it was 1 year later, and obviously the big difference is it's Alex rather than Giannis, but
little difference.
It excites me. We were talking about the Antetokounmpas, right? There's a big drop off after Giannis. So Alex is still 20 years old. He played overseas last year. I think very limited minutes in the Spanish league. So nothing that jumped off the page. But as Jazz touched on, right? The Raptors have a very well-respected minor league system. The 905 are very good at grooming these young players, right? And then the Antetokounmpo family and Masai obviously have a long running connection there. So maybe having that mentorship of the other players coming to the 905 games, having Masai sort of probably on speed dial, maybe he will be able to blossom into a player. I realize he went undrafted this year, so he's probably very low on the pecking order. But if he can land somewhere in between Giannis's expectations of him being even better than him and the second and third Antetokounmpo brother, I'll be happy if he lands somewhere in between them. So, there are obviously other players to keep an eye on that are probably going to have more of an impact in the immediate future. But I think Jazz absolutely nailed it. There is this this culture of the 905 that is directly connected to the big league club, right? And I think the fact that they're playing, sorry to Mississaugas that are listening, but in the same city essentially, right? Or at least down the highway. So we might get some thumbs downs for that, but you're playing, right down the street, so to say, and coaches can come, the GM can come. You can talk to players that are actually in the league. I remember when way back in our college days, Jazz, when we covered a 905 game for one of our courses, and I remember I believe Pascal Siakam and Jakob Poeltl were both in the game that we were covering on. I only remember that because I had to triple check the spelling of both.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because you guys actually did cover that stuff, and you guys were actually there courtside.
Exactly. So, but they played that game that we were covering on, and I don't know if it was the next day or just later in the week, but both of them were back with the big league club within a couple of days. So I think that's what's great about having a team in the same city or in the GTA, right? Is the fact that these young guys have all the energy in the world. You can say, go play in the G League, and if we need you tomorrow night, can you come to the Scotiabank Arena and play for us as well? And they're always going to say yes. You've seen that with I know
Milano Banton.
Banton, yeah, there's a perfect example. David Johnson, I think, as well, is the other second rounder, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's been up and down. You look at the history. You have guys like Pascal, Jakob Poeltl. They're able to just circle them back and forth between the two league clubs, and the fact that they're getting more reps, they're playing back to backs. One in the G League, one is a bench player with the Raptors. That's great for their development as players, and I think it helps boost their confidence. They don't feel like you're being banished to sort of the basketball Siberia. And I know in baseball with the Blue Jays, with the Blue Jays, when you get sent down, you're either sent to New Hampshire or you're sent down to Buffalo. Now tell me that's not a blow to your confidence, right? Like, get on the bus and go to Buffalo.
Concrete jungle,
yeah. Go Bison. Okay. That was great what you guys just said. Thank you guys so much for that input. Skip, I got to ask you, based on what Jazz and Tyler have said, they did mention the G League, the Raptors 905 being a springboard, being having some positive development for some of the players, for some of the coaches. How do you feel about the way the Raptors are structured now? Are you happy with how it's going to go forward based on what the Raptors have available on their 905 roster?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to say that Alex Antetokounmpo is averaging 1.5 points a game in the G League right now.
He got 3 points. He made one bucket, and it was a 3-pointer.
If you can't sign Jose Canseco, sign Ozzy, right? Like, what are you going to do? So, anyway, as to your question, I think, look, it was important for the Raptors to get the 905 in the first place. There's no arguing that. I remember when Bruno Caboclo was playing for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, and he had to fly out to the middle of nowhere and was barely playing. This guy's not developing. It just was not working. So it makes a lot of sense that, yes, you need to get a minor league team that's close to your home facility, accessible to your home facility, I should say, that you can sort of monitor the guys, see how they're playing close at hand, know if a guy has a breakthrough, before another team just sees him and is we're going to sign this guy away. Because that's the thing about basketball. You brought up baseball, which is a really interesting point, because baseball, the minor leagues in baseball are hugely important thing, because you can have this thriving minor league system with all these guys, and one guy learns a new skill, another guy learns a new skill, and they're all helping your big league roster. But that's not how it works in the NBA. In the NBA, your G League team is a bunch of random dudes and 2 or 3 guys that you actually have signed to contracts. So it's
they're not drafted at 14 years old, right?
No, I'm just saying the Raptors don't have control over 75% of the G League roster. 75% of those guys could go sign with another team tomorrow. If Brooklyn comes calling, Alize Johnson last year. Like if someone comes calling, they could just steal a guy right out from under our noses. So in that sense, it's important to at least have these guys in-house so you can monitor them and know when you have something special before another team swoops in and takes them. But by that same token, you're not necessarily, I think we really overrate what a massive impact the 905 has had because of those first 2 years, right? Because those first 2 years we developed guys like Norm, DeLon, Pascal, VanVleet. But that's kind of the thing. When you're a really good team and you have these young players coming up, like they needed to get reps in the G League because they weren't getting reps with the big league club because the big league club was good, and there just wasn't room for them at that point to spread their wings and float. Now we're seeing like the Raptors are taking a step back a little bit, and the guys in the G League, yeah, they're fringe NBA guys. Sometimes they catch on with another team, but the last real NBA player, like the last, I would say, regular NBA starter that the 905 has developed, and we can argue whether Chris Boucher can still become that or not, but I would say it's Fred VanVleet, and that was 2016, 2017 that he played. Pretty much, you look at all the guys who've come through the system since then, it's a lot of guys who, yeah, they
Pascal.
So here's the thing with Pascal. So Pascal was
touch some nerves right here, guys.
Pascal was on that same team with VanVleet, so it wasn't more recent. It was that same team. He played 55 games in the NBA that year and 5 games in the G League. Like, we're not talking about this guy was like built up in the system. We're talking about a guy who was in the NBA and went down and played a couple games in the G League to get his swagger back. Like that's
he
really
was the Finals MVP, right?
But,
yeah.
But Skip, wouldn't you say that's important though, just for that confidence factor? Because the NBA it's a ringer, right? Like you have one bad game and the entire fan base turns against you. I think not having that spotlight in the G League and being able to sort of, work on what got you to the NBA and develop different parts of your game is important. You also mentioned how there's random players on the Raptors 905 roster, which I completely agree with. But at the same time, those 3 guys under contract with the Raptors are going to be center stage, and the Raptors development, management team is going to make sure those guys are the ones getting the touches, or those guys are the ones that the coaches are more attentive on. And that's one of the things that Jerry Stackhouse mentioned when he was a coach. This is an opportunity for those guys to, yeah, awesome, nice guy, scary as shit, but a really fun guy. Yeah, he said like this is a great sort of stepping stone, sort of a tool for these guys because they have the talent, they have the skill set to do not the same thing in the NBA, but to make an impact in the NBA. They just lack the confidence. Mm-hmm. And playing sports, I'm sure you all can agree, like the second you have no confidence, you miss a shot, it deters. Yeah.
That brings to mind Malachi Flynn, because I think that's exactly what's happening with Malachi Flynn. Because you look at this guy in the G League, he goes off, he's comfortable, he takes shots, he makes his shots. Then it's changing a little bit this year in his very short stints. But you saw him come into the NBA last year, and he would be like, "Oh man, I got to get my shot up. I got to like rush this. I got to like I only have 2 minutes to prove myself." Like I understand. There's definitely that factor there. And I'm not saying don't have a G League team. Like definitely the 905 is helping the Raptors in general in their systemic like growth. But most of these guys are getting that you've seen like over the past few years, like, okay, Alize Johnson, O'Shea Brissett, Malcolm Miller. Like second. These guys are either they're washing out of the league or they're catching on with another team as like the 10th or 11th guy in the roster. And don't get me wrong, that's important. That's important in a systemic sense. But in terms of actually impacting winning at the NBA level, these are guys who are giving you like half a win a year at most, right? Like these are marginal players. And I think kind of what happened is we saw VanVleet and Siakam and Poeltl go down there in that first year, and we were like, oh boy, like there are stars coming out of the 905. But yeah, there's stars coming out of the 905 if you put your young studs in the 905 to develop. Like it's sort of a catch-22 there. So at the end of the day, it's the G League. We know this. Like we know the guys in the G League are not generally going to be massively important NBA players. But I think we just need to like maybe step back a little bit from this narrative that the 905 is changing the way that people are approaching basketball, and the Raptors are this insanely great developmental team, which is like, yeah, you're a great developmental team when you scout well and you bring your players along well, obviously. But I don't think, yeah, I just think it's sort of like a truism, or
For sure.
you know what I'm saying?
Skip.
And maybe
Skip,
it's like,
hold on.
yeah.
Hold the phone here. Skip. I know you're going on sabbatical. You ain't gonna be here for a couple weeks. You get to duck this. What, are you kidding me? The G League is not being great when it comes to developing what the Toronto Raptors have. And I'm saying this as out of all of us, the only non-Raptors fan. Look at what they did. Pascal, VanVleet, you guys mentioned that. Boucher. Look at even what? Lorenzo Brown? Who? Y'all go look that up. Because I'm pretty sure some
That's
of
my
you
point.
fans
You
don't
win
even know who he is.
you win an MVP.
Hold on. Gary
And-
Payton. Let's
Okay.
look at coaching. My boy. I went to school with. I sat beside him for a whole year. Right there. We played ball together. Jama Mahalela. Look at him, what he's doing on the Golden State Warriors. Look at what the Raptors are doing developmentally. Look, they sent Delano Banton down there. We just touched on Malachi Flynn going back down there. Are you kidding me? I think the Raptors have the best. I'm going to say this. And if y'all don't like it, fight me. The best developmental organization in the NBA right now. Because a lot of these NBA teams are taking their players from overseas, drafting guys that are 15 years old, playing with grown-ass men. You know, that's what they're doing, right? They're taking players from here and there, trying to build super teams. But the Raptors are doing it from within because nobody wants to come to Toronto Lake. They always talk about the taxes. They don't like the color of the money. You know, they could say a lot of things like that. They don't like the cold, even though Minnesota is more north than us. Geographically, you can look that up. Okay. But I do think the Raptors are doing freaking amazing developing these guys. Look at all of the names that have come out there. Look at all the people that have come out. Jerry Stackhouse is coach of the year. Jerry Stackhouse was a great player. Coach of the year? Wow. That blew my mind when it happened. And that was, 4 years ago. Okay? So that's what I think. Now, guys, what I want to ask you, Tyler, is the Raptors development. How do you see this in the future? Like maybe give us a prediction, like maybe like 10, 15 years from now or some shit like that.
So just going back to something Skip was mentioning, talking about sort of the glory days of 905, right? Were also when the Raptors were having their glory days, right? So maybe there is something to the idea that, because I think we can all admit that the Raptors have taken a step back. They're probably, in a rebuilding stage for next few seasons, right?
Retooling, as I call it.
Retooling. There you go. So if we're talking about 5 years ago, well, if it was 5 years ago, we wouldn't have got a player like Scotty Barnes in the draft, but let's pretend we do. Someone like Scotty Barnes might not be on the Raptors, starting a lineup every night. He may have been a bench player, and he may have been in that role that Pascal was, in 2016 or whatever it was, where, he wasn't getting enough reps at the NBA level. So they had to sort of rotate him in between the G League and, coming up and being that extra man in the big league. So, I think if we're looking optimistically, we hope the Raptors are going to retool, rebuild, whatever we want to call it. Maybe get another good draft pick for another year or two. Let's see. And then, they're back in the swing of things. But I think moving forward, the 905 and the G League as an entirety should be important for the Raptors. And I think it is based on that idea that the Raptors are always kind of in a hole in terms of recruitment, keeping players. People there is the stigma about playing in Toronto, as you touched on. And if any advantage that a team can get is necessary. And I think the hope is that's what the 905 have been and will continue to be. So,
okay.
I'm hoping in 5 years where we're on this podcast talking about some glorious days and all the players that have been milled out of the Mississauga team, but
5 years.
I don't know. Don't hold me to it.
Jazz, real quick, man, before we get out of here, time's cutting short. What do you think about the Raptors' future and the 905? Do you think that's a great pipeline?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest compliments anybody can give to the Raptors' developmental process is, they're the new San Antonio Spurs. You hear that a lot, and that's sort of a culture that's and sort to add to Skip's point, the reputation may precede itself a little bit. As you mentioned recently, we haven't seen any Pascals or Norms come out of the pipeline. That's very true, and that's
tough to develop those guys. I'm not arguing that.
Exactly. I mean, the player has to have the talent as well. So it might just be not a bad batch of players, but maybe not as talented. I just think it's like an incredible tool for players to work on things that they're not able to do in the parent league, like Bebe shooting threes or Bruno jacking up like 8 threes a game. Like, you're never going to see that in an NBA game. They just have that sort of the liberty to do what they want, and I think that's so important. The confidence is such a big part of an NBA player. Where do I see them in the future? I think as long as Masai is here, I think that culture is going to be a mainstay. It's not something that's going to go. It's already entrenched in the fans, the players. He only brings quality guys here. Obviously, the Terrence Davis exception that happened after he drafted him, anyways. But Masai and Bobby, they vet these guys. Even when Dan Tolzman was here as a GM for the 905, like he always talked about the culture and just bringing upstanding basketball players. Obviously, you want talented guys, but you want guys who aren't going to cause locker room troubles. And I think that's one thing. As long as the Masai is still around, I think that's going to continue. I think the Raptors are going to find more, needles in the haystack. Raptors have a great international scouting team, as well as, in terms of just not just international, but like NCAA guys. Masai is always traveling and looking at different talents, and he's always going to find someone. If he can sort of stuff these guys in the G League and have them grow there, you're going to end up getting players who are rotation NBA guys, or if not on the Raptors, then other teams. And that's something that's sort of unprecedented. I guess the Raptors haven't really, or the NBA hasn't really had a mind. They had the D League before, but that was sort of an afterthought. And
Well said. It's not the WNBA where they can bring them up. Thank you, Jazz.
No comment. No comment.
Skip. You were taking the next little while off. You got a lot of work to do. You got a lot of things to deal with. That's great. So, do you have any last words, my man? You're my brother. I love you. I love seeing your face, and I'm gonna miss you for the next couple of weeks.
Just keep subscribing, keep watching. I'll be back. We want to keep this channel growing. I just need a little personal time, but I'll be back in the new year, hopefully. So hopefully we keep adding subscribers, keep commenting on our videos, and I'll be back in force, and hopefully Brian can hold it down while I'm gone. So.
While you're gone, we'll be having Tyler, we'll be having Jazz, we'll be having Robert, we'll have Rob, we'll have Papa, we'll be having Kenya, we'll be having a bunch of people coming on.
All right.
Right? So don't worry about it. Well, even Alexei Oates on there, maybe Kirk.
This is like the Raptors when OG went out. Putting the burden on the other guys. You're Fred VanVleet, Brian.
So, guys, thank you very much for coming on, man. It's always a pleasure having you, Tyler, you, Jazz, especially you, Tyler, with your jokes. Your infectious laugh kills me. Jazz, your great mind. Skip, your beautiful face. I love it. So, can I sign out, guys?
Yeah.
All right. On behalf of myself, Tyler, Jazz, Simon Brodeur, don't miss him as much as I do, or as I will. Okay? So on behalf of all of us, go down there, click subscribe, click like. You guys know what to do. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, and
peace.